The morning began like any other on the set of The View. The stage lights were bright, the coffee was hot, and the script was printed neatly and color-coded for each host. The producers moved fast behind the scenes, making sure every second of the live broadcast would go as planned. They had done this hundreds of times before, but today felt different. Michael B. Jordan was the day's guest. A respected actor, director, and advocate. He was there to promote his latest film about a forgotten civil rights case. The topic was heavy, but the goal of the interview was not. According to the rundown, the segment was supposed to stay upbeat focus on Michael's achievements, talk about black excellence, maybe touch on the industry's progress. The words "safe conversation" were underlined twice in the prep notes, but not everyone got the same script. Late the night before, a confidential memo had been delivered quietly and directly to one of the producers. It came through a private email address linked to a media advisory firm based in D.C. The subject line was blunt: engage Jordan on selective activism. Keep pressure high, no early cutaways. The body of the message warned that Michael's influence was growing beyond cinema. He had spoken at closed events, met with policy leaders, and refused to attach his name to political causes. And when asked, he wasn't controllable. That someone had decided made him dangerous. The producer didn't respond to the email. But the next morning, a subtle change appeared in the teleprompter. A new segment labeled Audience Questions Social Impact. It was small, but it wasn't part of the original plan. Michael arrived at the studio quietly, wearing a plain black hoodie and headphones. Wasn't nervous, just cautious. His team had advised him to stay on script, to avoid politics, and to treat this like a promo stop. Keep it light, they said. Be yourself, but don't give them too much, he agreed. After all, he had nothing to prove. His work spoke for itself, but as he sat in the green room, something felt off. A crew member stared at him too long. Production assistant knocked twice before entering, and once again, 5 minutes later, without reason. Tested from odd angles. His instincts kicked in. When he stepped onto the stage, the crowd applauded loudly. Joy Behar greeted him first, smiling wide. Sunny Hostin followed, professional and poised. She shook his hand with a firm grip, and for a second, their eyes locked, not in friendliness, but in calculation. The segment began like normal. Michael talked about the movie. He praised the cast, thanked the director, and spoke about the importance of historical storytelling. The hosts nodded along. Sunny asked about how he prepared for the role. He smiled and spoke softly about empathy and research. The audience clapped. Then the moment came. Sunny leaned slightly forward, her expression neutral, but her voice sharper. Michael, you've been praised for using your platform, but some critics wonder why you stay silent during certain key moments. Say your activism only shows up when it benefits you. What do you say to that? The audience grew quiet. Michael blinked once, looked at her, looked at the camera, looked back again. He wasn't surprised. He had felt it building since before he walked out. It wasn't a question, it was a trigger. And it wasn't hers. I don't show up for hashtags, he replied, his voice even. I show up when I have something real to offer. I'm not interested in making noise just to be seen. Behind the cameras, a producer nodded. They got what they came for. Sunny didn't stop. But some would say that silence, especially from someone with your reach, can be a form of complicity. You were quiet during the protests in Atlanta. Didn't speak out when your former studio faced discrimination claims. Why? It was happening. Michael sat still, eyes locked, calm but firm. He could feel the trap tightening. The line between promotion and interrogation had been crossed, and yet his voice didn't rise. He leaned forward slowly, elbows on the table, and said, "You don't know what I do when the cameras are off. You only know what your producers choose to highlight. It's not activism, that's editing." A few people clapped, unsure if they should. Others just held their breath. In that moment, he realized this wasn't about his film, or even about advocacy. It was about control, about pushing him into a corner and filming the fallout. And suddenly he knew exactly what was going on. He sat back, calm but ready. The real interview had just begun. The silence that followed Michael's words was heavy, not awkward tense. A kind of silence that told everyone something had broken beneath the surface, and no one knew how to fix it without making it worse. Sunny Hostin adjusted the cards in her hand, but her eyes never left Michael's. She hadn't expected him to push back like that. The line about editing, it hit harder than she'd thought it would. Behind the cameras, the producers weren't sure whether to cut to commercial or let it ride. One of them held up a hand to signal keep going. Joy Behar, sensing the discomfort, tried to pivot the conversation back toward the movie.
Let's
Talk about the film a bit more, but Sunny wasn't done. If you're proud of your advocacy, why not speak about it more publicly? Silence, in the face of injustice, can feel like protection to some but to others. It feels like complicity. Michael turned slowly toward her, his expression unreadable. The corners of his mouth were tight, his eyes clear but cold. It was no anger, just something sharper. Restraint. Silence can also be self-preservation, he said quietly. You don't know the weight I carry, Sunny, or the things I do quietly, so they stay pure. If this platform needs me to perform my pain to be taken seriously, then maybe I'm in the wrong room. He began unclipping his microphone. Michael, wait, Sunny said, leaning forward, but it was too late. He stood up. He didn't shout. He didn't storm off. He walked calmly, confidently, with his back straight and his face calm. The studio watched him go, every footstep loud in the stunned quiet. The show cut to commercials so fast, the outro music barely had time to play. The stage crew scrambled. The audience whispered. Some applauded out of confusion, others just sat in silence. Joy looked down at her notes. Sunny sat still, breathing. Slowly, her expression tight. Backstage, chaos exploded. Michael's team was already waiting by the exit. A security guard tried to follow, but one of his reps held up a hand. Don't. He said what he came to say. He left the building without another word. 10 minutes later, Twitter erupted. Clips from the episode spread like wildfire. Walk off. The quotes. The look between Sunny and Michael before the final words. Hashtags lit up across platforms. Hashtag Michael walked. Hashtag silence is power. Hashtag respect Michael BJ or Dan. Hashtag the view controversy by the hour mark. The video had already hit 2 million views on TikTok. YouTube uploads followed. Thousands of comments flooded in. People weren't just watching, they were choosing sides. Some praised Sunny for pressing for accountability. Others accused her of trying to humiliate a man who had done more behind the scenes than most knew. Many said they understood Michael. That silence could be strength. That being public didn't always mean being honest. Then came the celebrities. Denzel Washington tweeted, "Not all warriors wear microphones." Ava DuVernay posted a frame from the walk-off with one word, dignity. Viola Davis and even Trevor Noah followed with their own support. It wasn't just sympathy. It was solidarity. A quiet code. People knew what had happened. They'd seen it before, be not so clearly. But this time, there were receipts. Back at the studio, ABC's producers held an emergency meeting. We apologize? Release a statement? Pretend it didn't happen? One executive said, "Let the clip speak for itself," but it was already too late. The story wasn't theirs anymore. The moment had passed into public hands and it was growing into something bigger than expected. That night, cable news picked it up. CNN ran a headline, "Michael B. Jordan breaks silence and walks out." Fox News twisted the moment into a talking point about Hollywood's sensitivity. MSNBC ran a special panel asking, "Do we demand too much of black public figures?" But the most powerful response didn't come from a studio or a newsroom. It came from a college student on Twitter who wrote, "Michael didn't walk away from the question. He walked away from the trap. And it's the first time I've seen someone do that without raising their voice." The post went viral, over 300,000 times in less than a day. Meanwhile, Michael didn't respond. No tweets, no interviews, no statements. He just disappeared from public view, and that silence. It became louder than anything he could have said. The news cycle had entered its second day, and still Michael B. Jordan said nothing. He hadn't posted, hadn't returned messages, no podcast appearances, no press interviews, no carefully worded PR statements. The silence was strategic, but it was also sincere. Michael had nothing left to prove. Not to the show, not to the public, not to the media machine that had tried to turn his purpose into performance, but that didn't stop the media from filling the space. Morning shows played the clip of his walk-off on loop. Commentators dissected his every move, how he sat forward, how he didn't raise his voice, how the phrase maybe "I'm in the wrong room" seemed to echo long after he had left. Some called it a meltdown. Others called it a moment of truth. And still others wondered aloud, was it all part of a bigger plan? In the quiet corners of media rooms, conversations turned darker. A journalist from an independent outlet named Lena Voss received a tip through an encrypted channel. It was a single line of text. It wasn't just sunny. Check. The View's pre-show prepped. Producer revisions. Attached was a PDF. A single-page memo, with a BC's internal watermark. At the top, segment notes. Michael B. Jordan. Interview strategic adjustments. Beneath it, insert prompt REI. Selective activism encourage Hostin to press on past silences. No early commercial break, maximize guest reaction timing. The source signed off with one sentence. He wasn't the only one being watched. Lena, who had covered government surveillance before, paused. This wasn't just about entertainment anymore. It smelled like influence, political, corporate, or both. She'd seen these kinds of operations before. Public figures turned into symbols, moments engineered to seem spontaneous. She started digging. Within hours, Lena uncovered a paper trail, a network of consultancy firms that quietly advised talk shows on narrative targeting. One such firm, Midabridge Advisory, had previously worked with federal departments, especially during election years. Its job? Helping shape public sentiment through strategic broadcast moments. The more she read, the worse it got. Michael B. Jordan had been flagged in a 2023 internal memo at MediaBridge. The note read, "Public influence exceeds content footprint. Potential for high-impact dissent. Monitor for non-participation moments." That phrase, non-participation moments, stuck in Lena's head. It was code. For silence, for refusal, for walking away. She tried contacting Michael's team. No response. So she published the story. Her headline: "Walked off or set up. Michael B. Jordan and the shadow play behind talk show tension." The story blew open. Suddenly, people were no longer asking why Michael walked off. They were asking who wanted him to stay seated and what they had hoped to gain by pushing him. ABC responded within hours, calling the story reckless and unverified. Sunny Hostin released a carefully worded statement. "I asked questions based on what I believed was public interest. I did not receive special direction. I support open dialogue even when it's uncomfortable." But viewers weren't buying it. The footage from the show was reviewed again, frame by frame. One TikTok creator zoomed in on a moment where a producer behind the camera gave a subtle hand gesture, right before Sunny asked about selective activism. It wasn't damning, but it wasn't innocent either. Meanwhile, Michael remained silent, but Lena wasn't done. A day later, she received a second encrypted message. This time it came with a video file. It was backstage security footage from The View's green room, time-stamped just 15 minutes before the live show. In it, Michael is seen talking to his assistant. A man wearing a headset, clearly not part of his team, enters the room pretending to check lighting. But he lingers. He's listening. He never speaks. He just nods, touches his earpiece, and walks out. Lena's heart dropped. This wasn't just show business anymore. This was surveillance. Quiet, invisible, professional. She paused before publishing again. If this went live, there would be consequences, but she hit publish anyway. Headline: Under watch, the quiet surveillance of Michael B. Jordan before his walk-off. The piece included stills from the green room. Lena's tone was clear, not conspiracy, not drama, just facts. Documented, verified, and disturbing. And once again, the public turned. What began as a celebrity moment had now become something else entirely, a case study in media manipulation, race control, and the price of quiet resistance. The final paragraph of Lena's article read, "We ask public figures to speak, to act, to lead. But we rarely ask who is pulling the strings behind the moments when they are told to fall silent." Michael didn't walk out because he was offended. He walked out because he saw what the rest of us only see too late. The conversation was never truly his. Still, Michael said nothing. But the world was now paying attention. Ask ChatGPT. The fourth day began with a storm that reached beyond entertainment. In the early hours of the morning, the hashtag they watched, Michael trended at #1 worldwide. Not just on X or Instagram, but on forums, podcasts, and independent blogs that usually had nothing to do with celebrity culture. Lena Voss's second report had changed everything. The footage of that silent man in the green room just standing there, watching, listening, had shaken people. Suddenly, it wasn't just about the view, it was about trust. Who was watching, and why? While studio networks scrambled to do damage control, new player stepped into the spotlight, Congressman Ruben Ellis, progressive voice known for challenging federal overreach. On the floor of the House, he demanded an immediate inquiry into unauthorized media surveillance involving private citizens under the guise of corporate production. He didn't name Michael B. Jordan directly. He didn't have to. The world already knew. That afternoon, a public letter signed by over 120 actors, directors, and activists was released under the banner, "Art is not surveillance." The names were powerful: Jordan Peele, Ava DuVernay, Viola Davis, Denzel Washington, Regina King, Donald Glover. But Michael's name wasn't there. He hadn't signed it. 'Cause still, he hadn't said a word. Not a tweet, not a press conference, not a repost. That silence had begun to feel like something deeper. Not retreat, not fear, control. Inside the ABC offices, things were unraveling. Sunny Hostin walked off set 15 minutes before that day's live show. She refused to read from the prompter. She asked to review her old production notes from Michael's segment. They told her the notes were lost in formatting. That was a land, she knew it. She wasn't just a host now. She was a liability. The whispers behind the scenes weren't subtle anymore. One executive said it aloud, "If she talks, we're going to need lawyers." Sunny didn't respond. She left the building in silence. That evening, Lena Voss received an unmarked envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a printed email chain dated 3 weeks before the interview. The sender was a strategy consultant at MediaBridge. The recipient, an unnamed network executive. Subject: MJ interview narrative control excerpt. Create a soft pressure sequence using co-host to introduce credibility challenge. Position: target to either defend emotionally or exit frame. Either response usable. Audience segmentation will determine follow-up messaging. Lena read the line again. Either response usable. It was never about truth. It was about reaction. Had engineered a moment, knowing whatever Michael did defend or walk out, they could use it. And he had known. That's why he didn't fight back. That's why he walked away. Because the fight wasn't meant to be fair. It was scripted. The article that followed hit like a shockwave. The engineered exit. How Michael B. Jordan refused. The role they wrote for him in it. Lena explained how narrative manufacturing had become a quiet industry where news, entertainment, and government relations overlapped. She exposed how consultants created public confrontation to spark engagement metrics. How outrage clips became policy tools. How talk shows had stopped being about dialogue and started being political theater. The final paragraph read, "Michael didn't leave because he was weak. He left because he recognized the script and chose not to perform it." Within hours, Michael's walk-off had gone from viral moment to case study. Universities requested Lena's permission to archive the footage for academic analysis. Media watchdogs called for hearings. Civil rights lawyers launched petitions. And behind closed doors, television executives panicked. What had been meant to embarrass Michael had done the opposite. It had revealed the machine. And then finally, 5 days after the interview, Michael B. Jordan broke his silence. Not through a PR team, not on a podcast, not on The View, just a video. Black background, no lighting tricks. Ow. Shot from his phone. He spoke quietly, looking straight at the camera. I've been told to say something. I've been offered money to say it softly. I've been warned about what happens if I don't speak the right way. But let me make it clear, I didn't walk out because I was offended. I walked out because I saw the strings. I saw the stage. I knew my story didn't belong to me the moment I sat down, so I took it back. Why? To those who watched, thank you. To those who stayed quiet, I understand. To those who built the trap, be careful next time. I don't play roles I didn't. Right. The video ended. No music, no hashtags, no filter. And just like that, his silence became his weapon. Ask ChatGPT. Day 7 didn't open with noise. It opened with a courtroom. A class action lawsuit had been filed not by Michael B. Jordan, but on behalf of viewers. The suit targeted ABC and its strategic consultancy partners, accusing them of deceptive editorial practices, emotional manipulation for profit, and covert psychological influence disguised as entertainment. The charge was simple, but seismic. The public was not watching real conversations. They were watching controlled confrontations, staged to provoke emotion and shape opinion without disclosure. The case triggered a domino effect within hours. 3 more whistleblowers came forward, 2 from rival networks, and 1 from a popular streaming service. They admitted that interview segments involving high-profile black artists and activists had been enhanced behind the scenes. Scripted tensions, edited body language, delayed applause tracks, all carefully designed to make resistance look like aggression, and calm like guilt. The public had suspected, now they had proof. Meanwhile, Michael B. Jordan's documentary, No More Chairs, wasn't even out yet. But the teaser alone had already changed the conversation in it. A mother spoke about the day her son turned down scholarship interview because he didn't trust the people holding the camera. A nurse recalled being asked to share her grief for a segment about pandemic heroes, only to learn her sadness was edited to promote a pharmaceutical brand. A retired teacher whispered, "They never want your whole story, just the part that fits the message." Michael wasn't in the teaser. Not once. But his fingerprints were on every frame. He wasn't telling his story. He was building a platform for others to own theirs. And that shift from subject to platform builder was the ultimate act of defiance, because they had invited him to play a role, and instead, he'd rewritten the script. Elsewhere, talk show ratings were plummeting. Networks were scrambling to redefine their formats, promising open dialogues and unscripted forums. But the audience wasn't buying it. Trust had been broken. More importantly, the public had discovered a taste for something else. Media that didn't force trauma into trending clips, or silence into shame. Michael's silence had never been weakness. It was strategy, and now it was spreading. Across campuses, across art collectives, across underground media platforms, people started talking not just about what had happened, but about how often it happens. To women, to activists, to whistleblowers. To anyone who enters a room thinking they're being invited to speak, only to realize the script has already been written for them. The phrase, "No More Chairs," became more than a title. It became a banner under which people told stories on their own terms. A woman in Chicago held a protest sign with the quote, "I won't sit for applause I didn't earn." A student radio host in Houston wore a shirt that read, "Ask me a question, not a trap." A war veteran live-streamed himself turning down a national interview offer saying, "I saw what they tried to do to Michael. I'll speak where I'm safe." Back in Hollywood, some executives hoped the storm would pass. It didn't, because this wasn't a storm. It was a reset. And then 7 days after it all began, Michael B. Jordan posted one final message, just text white on black. Those who walk out before they are forced to perform, you are not weak. You are not wasting the moment. You are saving your soul. He signed it simply, MJ, and with that, he logged off. No tours, no media rounds, no attempt to reclaim anything because he had never lost anything. In a world that demanded noise, he had won with silence, and that silence, it echoed louder than any headline ever could. The fallout reached global headlines by the 5th day. Michael B. Jordan's quiet video message, less than 2 minutes long, was now the most reshared clip of the year. Media platforms scrambled to analyze every sentence. Journalists across networks tried to soften their previous stance. Entire panels formed around one core question. If our platforms are no longer safe for honest voices, who is media truly serving? The public had chosen a side. But more than that, they had shifted the battlefield. It wasn't about Sonny. It's Hostin anymore. It wasn't even about The View. This was about power, narratives, the invisible forces that pull strings behind screens while pretending not to exist. In D.C., Congressman Ruben Ellis used Michael's walk-off as the opening to introduce legislation for ethical transparency in broadcast journalism, demanding an investigation into consultant groups like MediaBridge. Leaked emails and whistleblower accounts piled up. Former interns at talk shows began posting anonymously, admitting that guest segments were carefully orchestrated performance traps. Public trust in daytime TV plummeted, but the storm wasn't just political, it was deeply personal for many. Black artists, scholars, and activists began to come forward with stories of moments where their silence had been misinterpreted as guilt, and their dignity framed as arrogance. Michael had become more than a trending name. He had become a mirror. One powerful op-ed from poet and Professor Camille Ray summed it up. He didn't raise his voice, didn't slam the table, he didn't make a speech. He walked. And in doing so, reminded every black man and woman watching what resistance looks like when you reclaim the right to leave. That same day, Sunny Hostin finally responded, not through her show, not through a network release, but in a guest piece titled, "What We Let Happen in Silence," published by The Atlantic. In it, she didn't deny the memo. She didn't confirm it either, but she said one thing clearly. There was pressure. There were expectations. There was a silent, unspoken rule behind that desk to create impact even if it cost someone their peace. I broke that rule for years. That day I followed it, and I regret it. She admitted she hadn't written the question about selective activism. She admitted she had hesitated to ask it, but asked anyway, because producers had hinted that real journalism means discomfort, and if she didn't push, someone else would. Michael didn't fail the moment, she wrote. I did, because I forgot who the moment was really for. The admission sent shockwaves. It also made her a target. ABC suspended her pending an internal review. The headlines twisted quickly. Sunny Hostin, from interviewer to whistleblower. ABC faces host crisis after walk-off fallout, but the public. They didn't cancel her. They listened, because something bigger was happening now, reckoning with performance journalism. More studio insiders came forward, describing coordinated campaigns between media consultants and lobbying firms to shape televised discourse. Around public figures, exposure triggered calls for reform. Activists marched outside ABC headquarters holding signs like, "We're not your ratings bait. Silence does not equal consent. Talk shows aren't courtrooms," meanwhile. Michael disappeared again. No tweets, no interviews, no public statement. But his silence no longer felt passive. It was strategic. His agent declined every media request. Ava DuVernay posted a single sentence on Instagram, "You don't owe anyone your trauma on demand." And Lena Voss? She wasn't done either. She published one last investigation, pulling together the strings behind the original MediaBridge memo. In it, she revealed a web of contracts that tied the consultant group to political action committees, one of which had recently expressed concerns about non-aligned black influencers shaping youth culture without supervision. In simpler terms, they feared Michael's influence because it couldn't be bought or controlled. The public was furious. And finally, Hollywood responded. Several black-led production companies announced they would fund and develop their own independent media outlets where storytelling wouldn't come with ambushes or secret memos. They called the movement No Scripts, No Strings. And at the center of it all, without trying, without asking, stood Michael B. Jordan, not as a victim, not as a viral moment, but as a man who chose to walk rather than perform, and in doing so, He exposed something far greater than the show. He exposed the system that built it. The sixth day began not with headlines, but with silence again. But this time, it was strategic silence from the media itself. Major networks had begun pulling archived segments from public access. Episodes of The View were under review. Clips of Michael B. Jordan's walk-off were flagged on YouTube for contextual evaluation. It was quiet censorship, surgical and selective. The audience noticed, and they weren't having it. Social media exploded with backlash. They're erasing evidence in real time. This isn't about protecting anyone, it's about control. We watched it happen. You can't delete the truth. Then something even stranger occurred. Several daytime talk shows abruptly canceled their next week's guest appearances, citing production delays or unforeseen studio revisions. A pattern was forming. Media outlets were scared, not of the backlash, but of exposure. Behind the scenes, legal teams at ABC and MediaBridge were working overtime. Internal emails now leaked showed frantic damage control. One particularly revealing message read, "We need to contain the idea that silence is resistance." That's the narrative gaining traction. We can't let walk-offs become normalized responses. But it was too late. In cities across the U.S., universities hosted impromptu panels and town halls about the incident, not about Hollywood. Voice, control, and what it means to walk away from an oppressive conversation. One panel in Atlanta featured scholars and community organizers dissecting the now iconic phrase, "I don't play roles I didn't write." It had become more than a quote. It was now a cultural doctrine, the idea that dignity could be found not in explaining your truth to those who refuse to listen, but in refusing to stay seated at tables built to discredit you. Meanwhile, Sonny, Hostin still suspended, made a quiet appearance on an independent podcast hosted by an old friend. It wasn't a confession, wasn't a PR cleanup. It was honest. Her voice was different, softer, real. "I knew what the segment was supposed to be," she said. "I also knew the network wanted a moment, not insight, not truth, just tension they could sell, and I delivered it." But what I didn't expect was the way Michael looked at me. Not angry, just tired. Tired of being asked to bleed in order to be believed. She paused before continuing. The worst part, I understood that feeling. And I still asked. That audio clip was shared by millions. And while some still criticized her, many, especially young journalists, understood the pressure. The way media incentives can twist even the best intentions. Sonny's vulnerability shifted the conversation. Again, this wasn't just about Michael anymore. This was about every person who had been called to speak but not truly heard. The media called it the Jordan effect, the slow unraveling of a system where performance had replaced conversation, and confrontation had replaced curiosity. But Michael didn't acknowledge it. Instead, his next move wasn't a post or a speech, but a documentary announcement posted by his production company on a black screen with white text. No more chairs. A film about power, silence, and the stage we're told to sit on. The announcement stated that the film would not feature celebrities. It would feature community voices activists, students, pastors, mothers, whistleblowers. Everyday people who had once been pressured to play along with roles they didn't write and refused. In the first 24 hours, it raised $2 million in donations through crowdfunding alone. The world was watching. But now, Michael was in control of the camera. And then, in a quiet but symbolic move, he returned to public life. Not through a talk show, not through a red carpet. He appeared unannounced at a local community center in Newark, New Jersey, his hometown, speaking to a group of teenagers about self-worth and media illusions. "If you don't owe anyone your wounds," he told them, "you don't have to speak just because they ask. You can walk. You can protect your peace." It's power too. No press. No reporters. Just a few shaky videos captured by phone, but those clips told a bigger story than any headline ever could. Michael had not been silenced. He had simply chosen a different platform, and with every quiet word, every walk-off, every refusal to perform, he was teaching a generation not how to speak louder, but how to own the silence.